Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's 2 o'clock, so we're very respectful of everyone's time. So it is my very great pleasure to open the session this afternoon. It's a joint webinar between Next Generation Internet Initiative called NGIoT and the Digital Skills and Jobs Coalition. And the focus of the webinar today is going to be IoT and digital skills. We're entering into an era in which the availability of digital skills has become much more important and much more obvious than even a year ago. The recent events, the pandemic, have brought to the fore the necessity for all types of organizations, but also private citizens, to be able to understand how different technologies work and how they can access them in order to lead fruitful lives. So this is not just about being able to connect for a Zoom meeting and conduct your business remotely. It's also about how we engage with other people. How do we meet new people? How do we understand what technologies can be applied to our day-to-day? And we have an amazing range of presentations today. First of all, we shall start with before we go on to that, sorry about that, just to remind you that we will be recording the webinar and that the recording will be made available afterwards on the NGIoT website. We have some tags there for everyone to use social media. It's definitely the name of the game nowadays. Things have to be tagged to make sure that they're accessible and they can be enjoyed and optimized across different platforms and across different communities. Before we go into just a very brief outline of the session today, I just wanted to thank Martel for organising the NGIoT side of events, and of course Christine and everyone at the European Commission, and Brendan Rowan from BlueSpecs for bringing together everyone from the Digital Skills and Jobs Coalition. As you can imagine, identifying people that are going to provide content that's going to be enriching, interesting, and hopefully going to be stimulating new discussion and enable us to take away key learning points is no easy task. This webinar has been in preparation for a number of months now, including the summer months, so added complexity there. So my thanks to everyone involved, and very well done, congratulations. So just a word on myself. I'm Tanya Suarez. I'm the CEO of BlueSpecs. We work a lot on IoT, but forward-looking IoT, and generally the connectivity and smart and intelligent infrastructures that enable society and business to function. We are very proudly working with the European Commission also as the Secretariat for the Digital Skills and Jobs Coalition. And I'm also CEO of IoT Tribe, which is an accelerator that supports corporates to work with startups on emerging technologies, including the Internet of Things, but also very importantly, artificial intelligence. So I think that this experience and the fact that we work not just in Europe and the UK, but also in Singapore and other global markets, really enables us to see what's happening across the globe and what some of the challenges are. And indeed, that is the case with everyone that's on the webinar and on the panel today. So I would urge you to make use of the Q&A function as well. I shall be using that and keeping an eye on that to pose questions that you might have of the panelists. And without further ado, I think if we could just invite, there we go, our first panelist, sorry, our first presentation, Federico Facca, who is the CTO at Martel. He's the head of the Martel Lab, and he is going to be telling us a little bit more about the NGIoT Research and Innovation Roadmap for IoT. Thank you very much, Federico, over to you.
Thank you very much, Tanya, and good afternoon, everyone. So I'm trying to share my screen. Hopefully you are going to see something anytime soon. Okay, just let me know if this is coming up.
You can see it now. Perfect.
Very good. So yeah, I will try to keep this brief, and I will try also to provide the proper context in relation to the activities that inside NGIoT we are running to support the Commission, in order also to make you understand also what we see in terms of relation between this research and innovation roadmap that we are building and the societal and economical issues related to the investment on the creation of digital skills. So to start with some context, I assume that all of you have an idea of what is Internet of Things, and I'm just showing up here one of the most quoted definition, which is the one of ITU, standardization body. And the interesting aspect for me in this definition is this last part of the sentence. So we know that the Internet of Things is infrastructure that interconnect things with the services to deliver added value of application. But the interesting aspect in this sentence for me that is Internet of Things build on existing and evolving technologies, which means that Internet of Things has a really strong interconnection with many other technologies, and not only technologies, as we will see later on. And it is also possible to see this checking at the value chain, where you have companies working at the things level, company working at the connectivity, platform, analytics, and so on. Is not only this implies that, of course, a complex technology, which is also called often by experts in the field system of system, is also a complex ecosystem of actors around it. This is, for example, also an architecture that reflects these aspects that was developed in the context of the IoT pilots, large-scale pilots. Also, it is clear that especially in many fields, the role of potential role of IoT for the European competitiveness is really strong. For sure, it's becoming a driving technology in the manufacturing, in the retails, in the logistic, in the automotive, in the healthcare, and so on. That's why, of course, it is important that Europe support and adopt more this technology in the different fields in such a way that this whole sector advance. And of course, the European Union is working on their next multi-annual framework, financial framework. And in this context, as you might have heard, there have been a number of strategic document released and other that will upcome. Many of them are deeply related with the Internet of Things. For example, all the data strategy is clearly referencing to the Internet of Things, especially in some sectorial data spaces. also the industrial strategy package, especially in reference to the in manufacturing field and other industrial areas, including the energy. But it's not only referring to that, it's also referring in a wide way to the digital skill. And this is, of course, largely part of the industrial strategy package, especially in the SME strategy. But there are also dedicated activities linked, for example, in the digital education plan. So Internet of Things and IoT plays a very important role in the upcoming, in the vision, in the upcoming plans from the European Commission. In relation to this, it is also important to mention quickly that there, of course, as part of the new multi-annual financial framework, there will be instruments to support advancement of technology, and not only of technology, that corresponds to what is today for Horizon 2020. In particular, the two instruments are going to be Horizon Europe, which is basically the follow-up of Horizon 2020 in terms of type of framework program dedicated to research and innovation. And very important, there is going to be a new framework program, which is Digital Europe. And Digital Europe is meant somehow to help transition of knowledge from research, mature research, toward more the market. And this means also that the digital education area has a prominent role in this program. And also in this case, given that one of the aims is deploying some mature technology at large scale, and one of the target scenarios are some of the target scenarios are very related to IoT, and this means that again, IoT and digital skills are very paired in some of the strategies of the Commission. Now, I will give you a quick overview of the outcomes in terms of analysis of the research priorities that we identified, and you can find more in our deliverable and report that you can find on the project website. But it's just to give you a glimpse. This presentation for me is not very much important to enter the details of the roadmap. For me, it is important to understand and show you, based on what are the priorities that we have identified, what are the digital skills that we see that in the next future are becoming for sure relevant. So for sure there are priorities on the sustainability and affordability of the IoT networks. There are research challenges on the processing architecture for the quantity of data and the need of real-time support of the IoT. There is a need for advancement in the cyber security aspect. There is now a need, of course, given the plethora of platform and sensor around, to increase capacity to automate interoperability, challenges on the privacy, on applying intelligence decisions on real-time data, on automating as much as possible the IoT infrastructure from the device up to the service layer, and of course in making the whatever decision and recommendation derived from machine learning mechanism on top of collected data, human understandable, which is a key aspect somehow to increase the interaction between the IoT system and the Internet of Things. Of course, there are also challenges related to the monetization of the data, sharing of data, and so on and so forth. And finally, of course, IoT is also the device layer, so is also making these IoT devices less invasive from the environmental point of view and having long-lasting batteries. Of course, the challenges I'm mentioning here are very related to the technology aspects. Then there are that are covered in the, and I'm covering these ones because are the ones from which we derive also what are the technologies on which we think it is important to invest in terms of digital skill. Of course, to respond to Cyprian, we have also a set of socioeconomical challenges that are well covered in the report, but I didn't cover in this presentation. I apologize for that. I don't want to spend much time on these slides, but what you see is that basically we break down these technological challenges into specific research priorities with a forecast of their maturity along a timeline, and also linking to key enabling technologies to advance in the given technology research priorities. And these all quite well explained in the report you can find online. The result is that from the point, at least from the iGiggle point of view, I don't want to enter in the specific details of what in digital twin or what in artificial intelligence, because this is in a general discussion on digital skills is clearly too much detail, but clearly the technologies that are core in the next future to develop and in some cases even to use IoT solution are edge computing, 5G, artificial intelligence and machine learning, augmented reality, which has a broader sense than just the visor, but even other sensorial means like haptic sensor and so on. Solution to bind the information together to create and the other solution together to create what is usually called digital twin coming from the manufacturing industry. There is for sure in many scenarios where traceability of data is key, important role for distributed ledgers, and of course advanced microelectronics with this new advancement in biosensor and nano batteries. But, and this is an important aspect that, and this is my last reflection on the skills, it is not just about technology skills. We have seen that the definition at the beginning emphasized the fact that IoT relies on many different technologies, but given the fields of application and the areas of and the privacy related issues and so on, there is to develop and understand and evaluate an IoT solution. There are many other aspects that are involved beyond the technologies pure aspect. So more and more also in psychology and sociology will take a role in the design and ethics and law in the evaluation of the compliancy with the regulation of Europe or other countries. So this is very important that to understand that it is not to build and to use properly the upcoming generation of IoT solution is not just important to invest on the what we can call the pure digital skills, but also on a wider set of more, let's say, humanistic skills. As I said, you can find more on the website, and I don't know if I'm too long with the time or not, and if there is space now for questions.
It's perfect, Federico. So we'll probably keep the questions to the end, because I think that there's going to be a lot of debate and thought stimulated through the different presentations. But I just wanted to recap on a couple of things you said. First of all, you talked about the Internet of Things being an evolution of technologies in which you were just not required, or not just required to understand how those technologies work, but also how they connected between them and how they work together to offer a product, service, or essentially work, be integrated into industry or into whichever domain that they were going to be used. The second thing that you mentioned was the valley of death as applied to European funding, which I thought was quite interesting, because normally the valley of death refers to startup funding, but you've taken it to this new domain where you're saying, okay, we're entering now a period in which we're coming out of Horizon 2020, we're still not fully into Horizon Europe, and we just need to be careful that we don't stop, that we don't just come to a complete standstill in between these two programs, that we continue to advance, and that we're really, really ready for Horizon Europe to take off from a point of action, and we're ready to continue with everything that we've been doing. The third thing was in relation to skills. It was quite interesting because you had two slides, first of all, in which you, it was in 10 different areas in which you outlined the skills needs in relation to the Internet of Things, and then you brought those 10, which I thought were really interesting, down into 7 that were perhaps a little bit more generic. But you also said that technical skills are fine and that they are fantastic and they are absolutely needed, but in Europe we also need some other types of skills to make sure that technology is being developed and used ethically, that it's being developed and used in a way that is coherent with European values, not least data privacy. So thank you very much for that scene setting. I'm now going to call on Christine Simon, who has been the chief instigator, I think, Christine, if you don't mind me using that, adjective noun for you, of the Digital Skills and Jobs Coalition. The Digital Skills and Jobs Coalition is exactly that. It is it's a movement rather than a single organization of people working across geographies, across different domains, to make sure that in Europe there's nobody left behind, and that we're prepared to really take advantage of all these new technologies to make not just work better and companies more competitive, but as I've said from the beginning, to make sure that our society is as inclusive as it can be. So Christine, with this in mind, can you just give us an overview? We're going to be hearing from some of the coalition members later on, but I'd like perhaps to invite you to give us an overview of the Digital Skills and Jobs Coalition, and also, of course, a call to action. Tell us how people can take part in this. Thank you very much, Christine.
Okay, thank you, Tanya. We can directly start with slides 2, as I have 5 minutes to pitch, basically, and convince you to join the coalition. So indeed, as you said, this is really a community. The coalition has been created and supported by the Commission since 2016, with this urgency, you know, this sense of urgency that was already there 6 years ago, 5-6 years ago, about the need to reduce the digital skills gap in Europe. So the idea of the coalition, and this is really the name, is to join the forces, all the organizations that can act to reduce and to train people in Europe to reduce the digital skills gap can join the coalition. This is also a platform where we exchange the initiatives that are working, maybe at a very local level, and that could be replicated in other regions or in other countries. So this is not yet in place, but we are working on having a platform that would be really in Europe a one-stop shop where we could showcase and also put the learning resources existing for digital skills in Europe. So we can pass to the next one. Okay, so the coalition is composed of organizations that are concerned by the digital skills gap, and I understand that this is also one of your concern in IoT, is not having enough people trained to deploy these technologies in the rest of the economy. So we encourage organizations to be proactive, to propose actions, initiatives. It could be trainings, online. It could be awareness-raising campaign to help Europeans to the digital transformation. And you see here that we have focused on 4 key target groups for the activities. The citizen, all the citizens. We know that in Europe, still in 2019, we have 42% of Europeans that do not have at least basic digital skills. Of course, it's not equal in all countries, but this is a lot. It's 42% that do not have basic digital skills. So we need to, you know, act across this target group at the level of the education, of course, at the level of the ICT professionals for all these advanced skills. And this is also going to be one of the objectives of the Digital Europe program with the pillar on education. And finally, of course, in reskilling and upskilling the labor force. We can get to the next one. So this coalition is composed today of 513 organizations coming from public and from private sector. We have big companies, but we have also SMEs, universities, NGOs. I trust that some of them are also following the webinar today. The interesting thing we can say today is that during the COVID crisis, we had a raise of applications to the coalition, which means I think people understand also that we need to act, you know, to be able to go online and to respond to the digitization of our economy and society. Next, please. So we also have the second pillar, if I can say so, together with the member, are the national coalitions. And there, of course, when we talk about training, we all know that it's easier to reach the people at local and national level very often. The people that need reskilling or upskilling usually are, you know, and then are in enterprises or are looking for a job, and they need to have interlocutors that are corresponding to their demand at a national level. So in 25 member states, we have one national coalition today. We hope to have 2 more. You see on the map that Finland and Germany do not have a coalition yet. The coalitions are collaborating, for example, on webinars, exchanging information on the activities. We have seen during indeed the first months of the year several webinars where countries could exchange their experiences in training scheme and measures. And soon there will be also events, community-led events online, organized in different countries. So if you follow up the Digital Skills and Job Coalition on the social media, you will see what is going on soon. And the last and important partner are the pledges. And there, indeed, this is where you could contribute. The idea, and this is why I put the reference to the pledge viewer here, the idea is that organizations are offering trainings or initiatives that could help people to be familiar with some of the very advanced skills, could be IoT, for example, or you could even offer training that would be available. I don't know if you have organizations that could offer online training, or you have enterprises that would offer traineeship for people. So I invite you to go and look at the pledge viewer to see what type of initiatives have already been taken by all the partners of the coalition. And we can go directly to the last one, that is a resume and an overview of the activities. And you see that among the 513 members we have in the coalition, 120 of these organizations have submitted pledges. Basically, they have offered to the community, to Europeans, resources for training, for knowing better what are digital skills. And you see there that we estimate that we reached, with these offers, these pledges, we reached up to 12 million beneficiaries. It looks humongous, but you can imagine if a platform is offering, for example, online trainings, you can easily train up to 3 million people through an online platform. But this is part of the initiatives, and you will see if you go to the pledge viewers that they are very micro initiatives. There are some startups or small enterprises that are also offering resources, training for people, and this is all together that we are contributing to this effort of training Europeans. And so I can only invite you to also, submit pledges in the coalition. The last point, and I finish with that, it's just on the slides before, we had also launched a pilot, the 100 digital opportunity traineeship that are offered every month through the Erasmus Intern platform. I think it could be also interesting maybe for some enterprises in IoT. This is a sort of a traineeship on the mode of Erasmus, where young people could take a digital training, and they could come from any sector. So they could have studied, psychology, or you were mentioning this other, background that you need for implementing IoT. And this is typically what could be offered through this digital opportunity traineeship. So a digital traineeship for people that would have studied, economy, sociology, other things in university, and would like to enter in this digital world. So voila, I've finished. I hope in 5 minutes.
Christine, you've done an amazing job, because believe me, we know from the inside all the work that goes into the Digital Skills and Job Coalition at the very many different levels. And I think that you've given an amazing overview of what it essentially is. I wouldn't say it's a complex system, but it's a big system with big, hairy, ambitious goals, as they're known in the startup world. Just to reiterate, I think that the invitation to everyone to look at the pledge viewer, if you are thinking as an organization of developing a program that is focused on digital skills, doesn't matter what type of digital skills, doesn't matter whether you're dealing with a technical audience or a non-technical audience, children or people who are maybe being retrained, or even within your own organization, you need to bring those levels of skills up. We would really encourage you to go to the pledge viewer, have a look at what's being done elsewhere, and we can always put you in contact with some of the initiatives that are running, so that you understand things that have worked really well, things that can perhaps work better if done slightly differently. It is a community, and it's about learning and making sure that we're continuously at the forefront of all things digital. We need to reclaim our space on the global podium. So Christine, again, thank you so much. Our next presenter is Damien O'Sullivan, who is the head, just put the next one on please, there we go. He's the CEO of ICDL, the ICDL Foundation, but also, disclosure, Damien is a governing board member for the Digital Skills and Jobs Coalition, so he has a unique viewpoint on everything that goes on, and has indeed been partly responsible and partly to blame for everything that's been happening. So thank you very much, Damien, and over to you.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Tanya. Good afternoon, everybody. I'll just share my screen here. Is that clear now?
That's perfect, thank you.
Great. So thank you for the opportunity to join and share and give our perspective on digital skills. For those of you that are not familiar with ICDL, ICDL started in Europe as ECDL, the European Computer Driving License. We started about 23 years ago with a small amount of European funding. There was a small project that developed into what has become a sustainable operation. So as an organization, we have offices around the world, but we have partners who operate in 100 countries worldwide. So our focus is on digital skills. As an organization, we specialize in enabling people to use technology. We're very much focused on the needs of technology users rather than the creators and maintainers of technology. And so the perspective that we bring to the topic today around IoT is related to our experience in developing and sustaining digital skills programs, more so than the very technical aspects of IoT. What I'm sharing now is how our program is structured, and it has continually evolved over the last 20 years. And what we have attempted to do is keep pace with how technology is impacting on our lives, but particularly on our workplaces. So the skills that we address in our programs are very much focused on the needs of digital workplace. And I think we can all recognize that the digital workplace has evolved radically in the space of the last number of months. The pace of digital transformation has accelerated. But we essentially now have 3 programs, and I'll focus shortly on the third, ICL Insights. But our ICL Workforce program is very much around the skills that people need for employability and productivity. These are basic digital skills around using technology that are common in the workplace. Use of PC technology, of office applications, and we have modules on areas that we call good practice around cybersecurity, data protection, and a new module shortly to be released on remote work, where we've tried to react quickly to changing needs, to help workers not just use the technology, but balance their use of technology and work in an effective way, balancing work and life. Our ICL Professional program, we describe it as digital skills for occupational effectiveness. And we're talking about users. These are maybe the kind of more specialist users of technology, but not IT professionals, other professionals who need to use or maybe heavy users of technology in their work. That could be in finance roles, in marketing roles, in engineering, but they're using technology in a very specialized way. And the third element, and I maybe focus on this because it is most relevant today, we have a new program we're just launching. We call it ICL Insights, and it is targeting, again, non-IT professionals, non-specialists, the business side of the use of technology. And it has come from demand that we've had in the market through our partner network, where people have said that we need to understand this new technology. So when we look at an area like cloud computing or Internet of Things, What we're trying to do is to provide a conceptual understanding to a manager, to a student, somebody who's looking to understand the technology. They're not going to be specialists, but it enable them to engage with that technology, to communicate with suppliers, with partners. And the demand for this has come from different channels in our network. One in particular was in the education system, where we've had engagement with faculties of business and management, where they've said our students need to understand this technology. They're not the computer science faculty, they're more involved in business and management, but they need to understand how will artificial intelligence impact on business. And the second part is where we've had demand from professions such as legal, finance, industry professionals, again, having to engage with this technology. So our module on Internet of Things explains to a business manager, to middle management, to leaders about the technology and how it might impact on their business, what opportunities it might create. But in terms of what we've learned over the years around digital skills and how this might be applied to the rollout of IoT programs and the development of IoT digital skills, what I'm sharing here is just a few key points, the lessons that we have learned over the years. And the first is we should focus on delivery, not development. Far too often, organizations, education partners, governments, and projects focus on developing programs rather than on the delivery. And the more that we can standardize on programs, the more we can put our investment into delivery, because the major obstacle always is around the rollout, engaging with participants, ensuring that the program gets delivered. So what we've learned working with partners and with governments all over the world is when they focus on delivery, they have much greater impact. And related to having a standardized approach is our belief, strong belief in certification. And of course, the audience would expect me to say that because our program is based on certification. But the reason for promoting certification is the extent to which certification ensures quality. If you want your program to be of high quality and consistent quality all over Europe, then certification will support that, because certification is not just a measure of the quality of the learning, it's a measure of the quality of the training, of the teaching. And what we find wherever we operate in Europe, in Asia, in Africa, in the Americas, that certification ensures that the program provider reaches a high standard, that failure in certification is not just a failure of the learner. If it's an individual learner, it may be a lack of commitment on their side. But if you have significant failure across a group of learners, then the spotlight must turn to the training that they are engaging in and the quality of the trainer. And of course, the second part is around recognition, ensuring that the person who is investing in developing their skills, that they gain recognition for that. And then finally, to say, a key aspect is scalability. How can your program scale across Europe? And that's around having multiple partners, not just in any one sector. Our program is delivered in secondary, in higher education, in vocational education, in corporate training. Funding is always an issue, and maybe touch on that later. And then the key aspect is stimulating demand. There's a lot of availability of digital skills programs across Europe. Where we need to invest greater, I believe, is in stimulating demand, creating awareness among the audience of opportunities that are there and the need to engage in those programs. So that's my very brief overview on the topic. Thank you, Tanya.
Thank you very much, Damien. And unfortunately, you know, this is a compressed webinar, so it's there's so much to unpick and to really delve into. I'm going to focus on your request for certification, or the stress that you've put on certification, not just as an end product of something to guarantee that someone has the skills that they purport to have, but also as a way to validate the process through which they've obtained those skills. So you were talking about certification also serving to indicate whether there's been failure previously in the training, provided that there are some signals there within a given group that they haven't really acquired the skills that are necessary through that process. So really interesting viewpoint there. May I now invite Palm Rarewell. Palm, as many of us, has more than one hat today. So Palm is the chair of the steering board for AIoTI, which is the Alliance for Internet of Things Innovation, where she's a colleague. Lots of work going on with IoT skills adoption across large companies, small companies, looking at how all the technologies are evolving and how they're really being adopted across multiple domains, as I said earlier. And Palm is also responsible, I think it's for public policy at Vodafone, Palm. And I'm very pleased to say that Vodafone are one of the pledges at the Digital Skills and Jobs Coalition. But Palm, with those very many hats, I'd like to invite you to perhaps share some of your experiences, specifically in regard to how you see the acquisition, adoption, development of IoT skills in industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanya. And it's a pleasure to be here this afternoon to be part of this very important and timely conversation around the significance of digital skills to European competitiveness and resilience. While I do not have slides to present today, I'm going to use this opportunity to share my perspective. The EU estimates that 9 out of 10 future jobs will require digital skills. There are huge discrepancies in the capabilities across the member states in Europe, with Netherlands and Finland being frontrunners and Bulgaria and Romania lagging. And as a company operating across Europe, closing this gap is critical. One thing that we learned through the COVID crisis was that digital skills are so important. They were essential to the staff in the healthcare system, public servants, students, and teachers, but also for those who suddenly were forced to work from home, like myself and many others that have joined this call today. And with this current approach, only 50% of students will be prepared for job roles demanding skills in innovation, collaboration, and digital skills such as IoT in the future. Focusing a little bit closer into SMEs, the existing 24 million SMEs in Europe were disproportionately affected during COVID due to lower digitization rates. While there are wide-ranging benefits of digitization and adopting digital tools like IoT for SMEs, the DESI 2020 data found that SMEs lag larger business in adoption of nearly all technologies, despite being connected to the internet at the same rate. So I think one of the key challenges for many SMEs is the capability or lack of knowledge and skills to plan, initiate, and implement digital tools such as IoT to optimize and improve business performance. So clearly there's a mismatch in the types of skills offered by the labor market and those demanded. In different ways and to different extents, this trend is likely holding back the growth of all companies, both technical or tech companies and non-tech companies alike. So there is this urgent need to help young people to develop their digital skills and also understand what opportunities exist within the digital economy. Research carried out by Vodafone and YouGov showed that 67% of young people had received insufficient career advice, and 38% of those felt that this advice was focused on non-digital careers. So in response to this challenge, we launched the What Will You Be? A program designed to support young people to understand how they will contribute to the digital economy. The What Will You Be program consists of 2 elements, the Future Jobs Finder and Digital Work Experience. On Future Jobs Finder, it's a free service and the world's largest job navigator for roles involving digital skills. It has relevant interactive courses from digital training providers, which can help each individual to enhance their skills and achieve career goals. Currently, the tool is available in 12 languages and has supported over 500,000 young people since its launch 2 years ago. On the other front, Digital Work Experience, we have provided over 165,000 opportunities for young people to receive digital skills training ranging from deep technical apprenticeships in IoT through coding courses, particularly for girls. Our Code Like a Girl program has reached over 3,000 girls in 23 markets, and we're quite proud of that. So at Vodafone, through such initiatives, we're contributing to address the digital skills gap, but I think there's a lot more that can be done. So with that, I just wanted to say thank you for the time, and I'll pass it back to Tanya.
Thank you very much, Pam, and I'd like to, of course, invite you to stick around for the next panel, because this is where we're going to be sharing different approaches and hopefully some different perspectives. As you know, I'm always up for a bit of a debate. It makes things more interesting when people have different opinions. So without further ado, could I also invite fellow panelists? So Adrienne Hagen, Adrienne, I hope I've pronounced your surname correctly, with whom we have a long history of working at Aarhus University. Adrienne is an expert in smart cities, very specifically. So she works with a lot of municipalities, not just in Europe, but globally, looking at how they can implement their smart city strategies, and obviously has a unique viewpoint there in terms of the skills that are needed in the public sector to really take advantage of the Internet of Things. Damien, of course, has just been with us, Francesco also, and Pam, you've disappeared off the panel discussion list here, but luckily you are there on screen. So if perhaps we could just, if you could just all put your cameras on so that we can just see who's talking at any one point. But if I could perhaps just start with you, Pam, what do you think? I mean, you spoke about initiatives that you have across, in Vodafone, about the need to make sure that people coming into the labour market have the skills that are needed, but also that they're advised properly by whoever it is they're talking to about their career options. What kind of skills are you seeing that you need in industry? I mean, and here I'm talking about you. Vodafone is one company, it's telecommunications, but you've got a whole range of suppliers. Your value chain is very, very broad. What kind of skills are you seeing are lacking at the moment in the labour market in relation to the Internet of Things?
Yeah, so I think actually Federico's slide where he had presented those 7 technical skills and the 4 non-technical skills really captured it well, ranging from the technical side, ranging from edge computing, 5G, AI, AR. All that technical element is so important as we're becoming more digitized, and Vodafone is becoming more integrated within the value chain as well. It's not, we're no longer we just don't provide connectivity. We have solutions, whether it's in smart buildings, we're in homes now. So it is important on that front, but I think having the non-technology skills, from ethics, law, psychology, and sociology, it's so important as well, because I think now, when we look at AI, we're getting into these areas that there are a lot of questions that are emerging. So I think those skills are equally as important for Vodafone.
Thank you. Adrienne, could I ask you to bring the municipality view on this? I mean, if we're all going to be able to live more sustainably and more inclusively, if, of course, we're living in environments that facilitate that, what kind of skills can you see are maybe lacking at the moment? What skills perhaps can you see are really growing, as in you're seeing more and more in this sector?
I think it's very important to also look at the public sector, of course, in addition to the industry, as the public sector is, as industry, academia, very much part of the ecosystem. So I think it's very much important to also take this ecosystem perspective. The public sector is also important because it has a huge innovation potential through strategic procurement and joint procurement. So just to bring that perspective in, when we are looking at also the skills lacking there, is also very much from an organizational perspective. It's also, as Federico mentioned, because as coordinators of NGIoT, we are of course heavily engaged in the NGIoT roadmap as well. it's very much built on what has been already there, Internet of Things. So it's an evolution. And you can also see that the public sector is a kind of challenged by its own history. So many things are divided in verticals. So it's very much silo based. So we also need to look into a kind of a change of mindset and to look into digital skills that can help to change that mindset. So to also bring in a kind of different understanding of how we organize us, not only with regard to architectural reference frameworks, but also to a kind of reflect that into our more cultural organizational setup.
Thank you, Adrienne. So I'd like to pick up on two things that you mentioned there. First of all, that the public sector is actually a procurer of many of these technologies, and as a procurer, they need to know what they're buying. Okay, they can't just say, "Oh, I want a new, I don't know, a new system that enables us to measure contamination or pollution." They need to understand exactly which system is going to be better for doing that, the legacy costs for buying into something, and what happens, of course, to the data that goes into that. So that's an interesting point. So there is a need for digital skills there, even if you're just going to be a purchaser of these digital products and services. And the second thing is, and I think that this can also be seen in industry, you made a reference to legacy. You said that, you know, the public sector is conditioned by history. I think that, and I'd like to invite Damien to perhaps provide his view on this, but the public sector has legacy processes and systems in place that need to be updated to cope with new technologies, new ways of working, and new ways of delivering services. Damien, can you see that within, because you work with users, can you see that need to adjust to new technologies being something that people actively seek, or is it something that organizations such as yours have to push continuously? You're on mute, Damien.
Thank you. Very often the perspective we find within organizations is a focus on digitization rather than digital transformation, that they seek to digitalize existing ways of working rather than understanding the potential of new technology and see how the technology can enable them to transform. That very often work practices that are just automated in some way fail to unleash the opportunity of doing things very, very differently. And like the ability of management to understand how it can redesign how it works comes from their lack of seeing the opportunity of technology. You know, we all have a sense of the extent of our use of any device or any application is limited by our own understanding. So like we're all limited users of our smartphone. Like we know what we know, and you no longer get a manual to explain everything. So it's a process of discovery. And it's the same with complex systems within organizations. The extent of understanding and designing in innovation into the purchasing process, I think, is limited by management's own understanding. So you're really looking at the C-suite and saying, well, like at CEO, CIO level, like, is there that understanding of what can be done, what opportunities there are? And, for us, we see the capability of innovation at every level. If we raise the digital skills of all workers, innovation can happen. You can be extremely innovative in your job using existing technologies, using it more effective. And yes, new technologies and IoT can bring new possibilities, but you have to have that understanding to enable that technology to impact significantly.
Thank you, Damien. Federico, can I bring you in on this last point? Can you see a role for Horizon 2020 is of course finishing, so it would be the new Horizon Europe program and the Digital Europe program. can you see a role for those programs actually addressing this? So it's a need to bring along all workers so that innovation and technological innovation can happen across organizations.
So for sure, the Digital Europe program is by design.
Federico, could you put your camera on, please? It's just easier to follow someone. I don't know.
Hold on, because I'm not sure. I have to undock the computer to see the camera.
Oh, don't worry then. Yeah,
I'm not sure what will happen. It might freeze or, but
yeah,
I will.
Fair enough. Yeah. I think we've lost Federico with that. So just while he connects again, Pam, can you, do you have any insights on that? So the need not just to ensure that C-level within Vodafone is aware of what's happening and the new technologies that could be brought into the business, but it's everyone. So somebody working on a Vodafone sales floor is also aware.
Yep, absolutely, and I think that kind of ties back into the fact that we're operating in different spaces as well, in different sectors. So IoT, particularly speaking right now, has the ability to change a number of sectors, and we are operating in those, whether it's agriculture and looking at how ground sensors can be incorporated. And so you need to have that deep technical knowledge of the sector, but also of how technology can do that transformational work. So agriculture is a great example. Energy and buildings is another example, and also healthcare, which is, we've seen how critical that has been just through the COVID crisis.
Absolutely. So while we wait for Federico, hopefully to disconnect, I think I've obviously broken the system by asking him to put the camera on, never mind. May I come back to you, Damien? Very specifically, you spoke about the certification, scalability, and I can't remember what your first one was. I can't read my writing here. But one of the things that I wanted to ask you is, of all the initiatives that you run and that you certify and that you've seen come through, not just IDCL, but also perhaps even in through your the support you've given the Digital Skills and Jobs Coalition, can you see are there any early warning signs that something is not working, or on the contrary, that it is working and should be scaled up really, really quickly?
I think we see a lot of very good practice around Europe. I think I said earlier that to me there isn't a shortage of opportunity or delivery, that we have providers who are capable of delivering digital skills program, and to me the risk is on the demand side, that we're not creating the demand, we're not engaging enough with SMEs, with employers, to encourage engagement in digital skills programs. Like, I think one of the best examples that we have outside of Europe, we work very closely with the government in Singapore, and Singapore has a very strong reputation for investing in its workforce. I think a simple example of that is our partnership is with the agency formerly called the Workforce Development Authority. A number of years ago, they rebranded as Skills Future Singapore. And it just points to a mindset. It's not a traditional public sector thinking. It's all about communicating with the citizens. So they have many programs where it's focused on encouraging workers within Singapore to engage in opportunity. They have a Skills Future credit system to provide funding directly to the individual that can be spent on training. Now, different governments have had challenges with that type of approach before, but it's about the leadership that they're seeing, that the need to create opportunities for people is not just on the provider side, it has to be on the demand side. And that's a key challenge for Europe, is getting a consistent message, particularly to workers, but also to employers and SMEs in particular. And that then obviously links to funding and the availability of funding.
No, absolutely, and cue there Federico talking about funding and the availability of funding. So thank you very much, and I'm sorry I made you disappear temporarily from the panel.
I'm sorry, I tried. You see, even though you are technology skilled, the technology might not always work as you think.
Nice to see you though. Yeah.
So yeah, as I was saying, the support to digital skills development is an integral part of the current draft of the Digital Europe. Still, the program is not yet defined in detail, so there is yet space to influence it and help the Commission to fine-tune what are the instruments and ways that should be put into field through Digital Europe. And for me, this is the important thing to say today in the panel, because this means that for us in the project is interesting to collect expert in the area view to be able to provide insights to the Commission. On the other side, clearly what the Commission will do is funding projects that will do digital skills. It's not that in Digital Europe they will develop themselves programs. So it is instruments and funding available to support initiative to develop skills, but not to steer them directly. And in my perspective, sometimes I wonder if maybe there should not be more influence on this aspect to standardize also the way this program works at the European level, because this might also be an issue. Surely partially solved by certification, that I'm a standardizing, but then there are somehow different type of certification, and this might also not be always very easy to compare them and also select one also for the people that are investing on increasing their skills.
So what do you, I just misunderstood that last point. So are you suggesting that there should be a standardization of certifications, or that there shouldn't, because, you know, it might depend on what you're trying to certify for? Yeah.
I think that they should be the European, at the European level, there should be more clarity of what are the proper programs for certain type of skills and other type of skills, especially if you think, for example, to the difference that was making Damien. You have a certain type of professional, and then IT professional, and then you have a business expert, and I think, for example, the evolution that ACDL is coming up with, it's brilliant, because this is one of the key problems in companies. You have people that are in the decision-making place for deciding to adopt, use a given technology and so on, but they have no the way to understand what does it seem stupid example, what does it mean cloud computing for my company? It's just that I'm putting a service that before was in my server, in a server that is owned by Amazon, or it allows something which is a transformation. And for example, it means that I'm able to provide the same service to more customer more quickly, or more business continuity. And these are the type of aspect that the link between technology and business value that are, for example, often missing in the skilling level and of the business manager, and there is not always easy to understand what path people should take to build this skill and knowledge.
Okay, no, thank you for that. So essentially, it's not just about the skills themselves, but what you are going to be, or what value those skills are going to be bringing to the business. So, Adrienne, could I ask you, with your perspective and with the experience that you have in the public sector, is that something that's done well in the public sector? Are there any particular initiatives that have been good at doing this? So saying, okay, well, if this scheme can bring up or elevate the skills, the technological skills of this particular type of public sector employee, and that has the following impact on the public services. Have you seen any particularly interesting examples of that?
I think that, again, I'm very much thinking from an ecosystem perspective. So I'm thinking about the large-scale pilots within IoT. I mean, there you bring academia, you bring industry, and you bring the cities together. So there you really work very concretely at some challenges, and I think there you really feel what is lacking. Perhaps the lack of maturity in the cities with regard to certain skills, but also a mismatch of expectations, and then at the same time a lot of potential which is there to develop. So I think those partnerships should really be promoted and supported also in the coming framework programs, so that you really build bridges and that each actor can get an understanding of the reality of each other.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really interesting point, Adrienne. Talking about that cross-fertilization was one of those uniquely European words that was bandied around a lot in the large-scale pilots and the IoT large-scale pilots that were funded by the European Commission under Horizon 2020. But I do agree with you that those large-scale pilots enabled the value of the technology in a given ecosystem to really be made clear, or on the contrary, for it to be shown that actually that technology provides a marginal benefit over what is being used at the moment, and also the effort in getting everyone onto the same system may not necessarily have the effects or the benefits that we were expecting. So a really interesting perspective there on needing to bring in or to be able to share learning across different domains. It's not necessarily industry or vertical specific. So Palm, can I just ask you perhaps you mentioned a couple of Vodafone's own initiatives initially regarding Code Like a Girl and some other things that you're developing within Vodafone that are not just for Vodafone, in fact, they're for your broader community, your users, the users of the future. Can you identify maybe things that have been launched by others, perhaps through your work within AIoTI, anything that really stands out for being able to demonstrate the value and the impact it's had on bringing up the level of digital skills and perhaps also the conversation?
Of course. So yes, of course, Vodafone's doing a lot in this space, as you had already mentioned. But I think at a European level, there's been a lot of things happening in terms of what we already discussed today in the Digital Skills Job Coalition, but also the Digital Competence Framework 2.0, which outlines the 5 critical skills, whether it's data literacy, collaboration, content creation, safety, and problem solving that all citizens should have access to. But I think uniquely at a national level, a lot of national governments within Europe are also doing interesting projects, and they're trying to digitize. In Germany, we have something that's focused a lot on SMEs. So there are targeted initiatives at a national level, and I think that's where a lot of these initiatives do bear fruit, because they have that local element included in it, because all countries are unique. They have a different composition of sectors that they should focus on. So I think digital skills need to be adopted to understand the uniqueness of each country as well.
Thank you, Pam. And I would like to invite Damien. Do you have anything to add to that?
Well, I think what you know, we're challenged by with the continuing waves of technology development and new technologies coming. And, you know, part of the challenge, I think, even is around, you know, the language of it, and the nature of integration. So when we're talking about IoT, we're also talking about artificial intelligence and automation. So again, I would just kind of go back to the core point of understanding the technology for the non-IT specialist is going to be key, and exploring how this technology can impact on business, and again emphasizing we need to remember that the SME sector is vital. And, you know, in a European context, SMEs can mean quite large companies. Like when you're looking at SMEs in Ireland, you know, we're talking about effectively micro businesses, and their ability to benefit from IoT or other technologies is limited by their understanding. So, you know, the best practices are good, but they need to be communicated down, like that you know, we can operate in the European bubble of projects, but if you're a small business owner in the west of Ireland, you're not going to be in that landscape of understanding. So how do we get the lessons from there communicated down through business networks to SME owners?
No, absolutely. And I think that Federico alluded to this earlier as well. And in fact, one of the questions that we have, we're going to go panelists across now to the Q&A. Our first question is from Kakia. So clearly there's a digital skills gap in Europe, both in numbers and in the digital skills themselves. On the other hand, there are lots of courses and training available, some of them free. So there's a lot of supply and perhaps not so much motivation on the demand side. So she's also saying that the digital platforms can help, but what can be done to redress the mismatch between the supply of digital skills training on the one hand and the demand on the other? Federico, could we start with you on this one, please?
Okay, sorry, I was muted. Yeah, this is quite related to what partially I was trying also to say, which is there is a problem of making rising awareness and standardizing the way you present the information and you give access to the people to the information. I think it is, as I was saying, for someone who doesn't know how to approach, he wants to gather new skills, but doesn't know how to explore the offer. It's really very, very complex to understand what he should look for. And we have not to forget that there are not just bodies like ACDL working on digital skills, but there are also universities and professional schools. So it is really a huge spectrum of offer. And I believe that the demand is not comfortable in this large amount of information to understand what is the right fit for them. So from my point of view, this is one of the first priority to help the demand, guiding them in a simple way to make a choice that really support them in the proper direction. Another aspect, I believe, and this is probably a good example what Damien was making before regarding the Singapore government. Often the government think it is easier to give the money to an organization that offer a given course and then when you apply, you get the course for free instead of giving directly to the individual and saying, okay, you have this budget available for you, and you know, you can invest on your upskilling, send us the invoice when you found what is the best course for you. I tend to believe that responsibilizing also in terms of the choice, the demand with the given available vouchers is also something that might make the demand more comfortable, because it's not given that these organizations that have been selected by the local governments are offering the course that the person is looking for. And so these are two activities at least that I see that could be, or approaches that could be relevant in the area.
Thank you very much. Damien, do you have anything to add? Because I think that's quite interesting. It's so Federico is essentially saying it's not that there isn't demand, the demand is there. It's just that we're not able to, any of us involved in the supply side, are not able to adequately communicate with that demand side. Is that your experience as well?
Like, I think generally funding tends to focus on the development and direct delivery of programs, or we have many European funded projects that have great output, but there's never a budget for deployment and dissemination and marketing. You know, you don't see a lot of marketing spend on Digicomp or the e-competence framework. There's a lot of money spent on developing these things, but to disseminate them throughout Europe requires an investment, and I think we need to rethink about what we're willing to invest in. Like it isn't just investing in the program, in the intellectual property, it's investing in deployment. And like when we think about businesses and providing funding, like it is about funding organizations to start to examine themselves and think about what possibilities there are. So the more that we can channel funding down to the enterprise and down to the worker, as Federico says, that they're the decision maker, you know, because we see the same trend in healthcare, that funding follows the patient, and the patient is the customer, rather than funding the provider side. That we need to do the same in education and training, that the decision maker is ultimately the learner.
That's really interesting, and in fact it leads on to the second question in the Q&A, which is from Davide Dalmasso. What funding do you suggest as a coalition, or those who aren't necessarily members of the coalition, to spread a model that raises awareness about digital citizenship and potentials and risks of the web? And what type of funding sources do you suggest for NGOs? Does anyone have any information on that? I'm not sure, David, that that's necessarily something that anyone in the panel can suggest, but is anyone aware of anything generally? This speaks to your point, I think, Damien, about there being a gap in the market, right? About raising awareness. It's that dissemination. There's nothing there for that. There's nothing there for deployment. It's at the delivery stage. Is anyone aware of anything that we could perhaps share with Davide?
No, maybe just comment on, to be fair to European institutions, to the Commission, there is an incredible amount of money invested in funding projects all over Europe. But you know, where we would like to see focus is the transfer of funding goes to national governments, and then national governments set priorities. Then you have project bidding, and people are spending a lot of time just on the bureaucracy of accessing funding, developing programs, having them evaluated. The more we can have standardized approaches and like a European register of you know, approved programs, so that we focus on delivery. Like this is what we do, and you know, this is not out of self-interest, but if you take ICDL in any of those 100 countries, it's the same program. So an institution in Singapore and in Kenya submitting to government doesn't have to keep proving again and again the quality of the program. It's a recognized program. Same thing can happen across Europe. If we can have a central register of this is an approved program, it meets the quality criteria, it has certification, then you don't have to go through a cycle of bureaucracy to prove the value to the participant. It's standardized, and that'll free up resource to say it's the outreach. You know, it's connecting with the end user is the challenge, connecting with the farmer, connecting with the factory worker to say, you know, you need to take the opportunity to upskill and, you know, eliminate the kind of bureaucratic element of it.
Okay, well, thank you. And unfortunately, we've only got time for one more question. So I'm going to read out the one, well, first of all, apologies, Carm, who has pointed out that he is a he, not a she, as I said, so from the Maltese Coalition, so apologies for that. Palm mentioned that only 15% of students are prepared to meet the required skills, I assume to acquire the required skills that are needed in industry. Does that mean our education systems need to fundamentally change to meet future demand instead of educating in the wrong skills? So Palm, that's directly leveled at you, that one. It's not an easy question either. Do we need to change our education system?
I do think there is a need to reimagine that. You know, the thing is, right now, it's just not about single technologies that we're looking at. It is looking at how can the youth be engaged in a digital economy. So setting up national and EU platforms to increase cooperation between education institutions, government, and the private sector is so important, because that's going to enable, you know, offering skills for employability programs. So you're the demand alignment of skills and supply and demand at a relevant level. So it is going to require rethinking of how these skills are identified, both current and future labor markets. So again, yes, I agree. I do think education, even at a fundamental level, whether it's grade school, is going to have to bring in an increase in digital training. And, you know, I would also like to just say it's essential that any training or education that is available, it needs to be available for all in order to create an inclusive digital society. So research from the Commission showed that women only represent about 21.5% of workers in digital jobs. So those are type of targets that I think we need to address as well. So subsequent to that, Vodafone launched Change the Face campaign earlier this year to help address that diversity in ICT.
And that's a really good point, Palm, because if you look at the investment and the public cost of actually getting young women into STEM education, then, you know, getting them into careers at universities that are STEM related, and then the fact that they don't pursue careers in technical subject, that's a huge loss for society for all sorts of reasons. In addition to the fact that there's just social fairness in doing so. But well, thank you very much, all panelists. So Adrienne, Damien, Federico, and Palm. I think now I need to hand over to Federico for some closing words. But may I just thank you all for sharing your insights, and of course all the people who posed questions on the Q&A panel, and I'm sorry you couldn't get through them all. Thank you.
Well, I would say big thanks to Tanya for the great moderation today, and to all the other panelists that have provided really very interesting point of views, and also to the very relevant question that we received from the attendees. Yes, I'm starting my video. What I think it is I wanted to communicate is just a few things. Well, first of all, it was early mentioned, the webinar has been recorded, and also after some days we will make available a report, the recording and the slides that have been used during the webinar. But beyond this, I think it is important for you to know that for us this is not one-shot activity. It is important for us to understand key points we need to further rise in terms of priority and needs with the Commission in relation to the technical, digital, and socioeconomic skills related to the IoT ecosystem. And so for this, we will keep you in contact. We will keep in contact with you, of course, and trying to gather more information on your point of view in terms of what are the needs from the point of view of the demand, but also to understand what are the limitation or the issue that also the demand side is experiencing into getting their program accessed by potential appliers. And so, yeah, expect some follow-up communication, but yeah, we will not spam you too much. Really, the objective is to give you a voice on this analysis that we are doing in such a way that we can provide useful and actionable recommendation to the Commission. And from my point of view, this is all, and I thank you again, Tanya and the others, for joining today.
Pleasure, and thank you to the whole of the Martel team and the NGIoT consortium for organising this, along with the team at the Secretariat, the Digital Skills Job Coalition as well, and the European Commission. So we hope that you'll all keep in touch and stay posted, because the conversation has just started. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a good afternoon.
Thank you very much.